Welcome to the First Nations Education Administrators Education Partnerships Town Hall. I'm so happy and proud as a citizen of Pasqua First Nation located in Treaty 4 territory to welcome everyone to this Western Region Partnership Town Hall. Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, and the northern territories that are represented as being in the West. What I am very happy about is, though we are hosting it from the Western region, there is something of value for all of the people right across Canada. So in acknowledging Elder Michael for the prayer, I note in particular his comment about the traditional teachings of having respect for each other. I can't think of a better foundation for our minds and our spirit to think about when we're approaching partnerships. So why would FNEAA focus on education partnerships? Why not? Indigenous partnerships, alliances, and confederacies are nothing new to us as First Nations people. Oral tradition tells us of numerous successful partnerships prior to contact. I myself am the product of a successful partnership between a Soto man and a German woman. We're not talking about that kind of partnerships, though. We're talking about education partnerships, building of relationships of all kinds. The idea of partnerships, I think, is driven by three main ideas. There is a moral and ethical imperative, a business case, and an environmental case for the value of partnerships. In the moral and ethical imperative with our modern day partnerships, I believe what is important is to do things with a good heart, with a good mind. So part of the moral and ethical imperative of partnerships is working together in a good way towards successful practices that will result in successful outcomes. In doing so, when we think about the moral and ethical imperative, partnership building and relationship establishing throughout our country, we should remember the valuable teachings of Dr. Willie Ermine, who speaks about the concepts of ethical space. That when partners come together, you have everybody on the partnership group would have their own specific ideas of why they want to partner and what the nature of a partnership would be. But what Dr. Willie Ermine does through his teachings about ethical space is he suggests a very special space that the partners would leave their agendas behind and enter into a space of sharing so that the best from the partners that are involved in building the partnership are brought forward in our case for good education outcomes for the children. We have many examples of successful partnerships across Turtle Island, and today we're going to hear about more. The business case for partnerships. This comes from a quote that I found in Indigenous Works. And part of the business case or the rationale for partnerships is related to our gross domestic product, not something I talk about every day. However, the business case for partnerships has estimated that if Indigenous peoples in Canada had the same education and the same employment levels as non-Indigenous Canadians, Canada's GDP would increase to $401 billion by 2026, $401 billion by 2016. If you aren't driven by the moral and ethical and educative reasons for establishing a partnership, perhaps you would be motivated by the business case and the quality of life that people could enjoy as a result of successful partnerships. What I was also interested in hearing, and Elder Mike referred to this in his prayer as well, is if we view the environmental case for partnerships with the condition of Mother Earth's environment, her health isn't well right now. We are at a crisis in our environment. I believe that through education partnerships that are comprehensive, that bring in care and concern for Mother Earth, it would be a valuable element of every partnership. And the example that I was able to identify is the partnership between Parks Canada and Indigenous people that led to the involvement and the sharing of traditional knowledge systems within the efforts to conserve and protect our environment. I believe in Indigenous partnerships because they satisfy a moral and ethical imperative. They create a good business case for why we should partner and build relationships. And there is also the added benefit of environmental care for Mother Earth. When we're considering partnerships, and I'm sure we'll hear this throughout the presentations today and through the panel discussions, the case study presentation, we will learn about the importance of considering positionality within partnerships, to be aware of what do we bring to a partnership. Partnership is not about insisting that your agenda be the only agenda brought forward. Partnerships are about sharing, perhaps discussing issues and challenges, but the real thrust of partnerships is about seeking solutions together. It's important when we enter into partnership relationships that we do not consider the other members of the partnership as stakeholders. I have noticed the word stakeholders used by our federal government at times when referring to something that ought to be a partnership and not the engagement of stakeholders. So who and why we are partnering is important, and then considering if the partnership is mutually beneficial to all parties is a critical factor. In closing, like everything else, how do we measure success? How do we measure success of a partnership? A partnership is successful just because people who have a shared concern care enough to spend time and build a relationship to work towards positive solutions. I believe it is important to benchmark our partnerships. Partnerships for PR or public relations are not acceptable. Partnerships that have the capacity to drive standards, to be constantly reviewed, analyzed, evaluated, and renewed are the benchmarks of a successful partnership. So as we go forward in today's town hall on partnerships, I look forward and I encourage everybody to look for the imperatives that are inherent within the case studies and the panel discussions that we have, to think about our role as individuals within the collective, and to always remember that if we want to define success ourselves, we have to set out the benchmarks for successful partnerships and be diligent in our evaluation. So enjoy the day. So thank you, everybody.